All right, it says we are live. Welcome to Guy at the Movies Live, your weekly source for the biggest movie news and discussion with special guests popping in along the way. This is episode 4. As always, if you are watching live here on YouTube as part of Guy at the Movies Live, I will be interacting with your comments throughout the show as best as I can, so fire away. If you're listening via the Guy at the Movies podcast, head over to the link on Anchor or hit the link in the episode description to leave a voice message. In future episodes, I will be playing and responding to some of them at the end of the show. So this is a special episode for us. It's a special night for the podcast. We will henceforth be known as the Guy at the Movies podcast with Joe and Sean, because the esteemed math teacher movies himself, Sean Phillips, joins us as the new permanent co-host of the pod. Sean, damn fine to have you here.
Oh, it is damn fine to be here, Joe.
Very happy to have you. Really excited for all the discussions that we're going to have over the course of this and every pod. So we'll start off with what we're watching in a little bit. But I do have a little bit of a surprise for you, which may freak you out.
Okay, let's do it.
You ready? So first and foremost, we are going to be debuting a new logo with the release of this podcast, this episode. So that's exciting. But there is, something with the previous logo that is kind of fun, and we went and got something made for you. So here it is.
Oh my God.
I think it turned out really well.
See, this is lovely. This is me as a Simpsons character. They even got the drink that I had right. Now, I do understand that cartoons are very, very apt at accentuating certain features, but I now know that I definitely give way too much teeth when I smile. This is those are terrifying.
I thought you were going to go the chest hair and wondering.
I am very, very, very proud of my chest hair, and this just makes me terrified to wonder if do Simpsons have chest hair. And I do like that I'm definitely breaking some sort of open container law by drinking in a field.
There's no rules anymore. We're in a pandemic.
You know what? Pandemic rules. Drink wherever you can. Exactly.
Right? Exactly right. So we, for those listening on the podcast, we will put this up on. I'll put it up on the Guy at the Movies Instagram, and then Sean, I'll send it over to you so you have it. And we'll be doing some fun stuff with that in the future. But I thought I'd share. I actually just got that this afternoon. So
that's great.
Pretty entertaining, right?
Perfect.
You're going to see it all over the place now. You're playing coy, but I know you love it. All right. So
I'll put it everywhere.
So we're going to incorporate a new part to the show each week now, and it's going to be what we are watching. And between the two of us, we watch a ton of stuff. I know we overlap a lot as well. We were talking pretty much after every movie we watched this past week, what was that? Or did you see this? Or what'd you think of this? So what have you been watching?
Well, I'm just going to go with probably what was my, it's tough to say what my favorite movie of the weekend was. But I think the one that's pretty popular is Palm Springs with the new Andy Samberg comedy. I personally loved this one. It's one of the more fun comedies out there. For 90 minutes, you can enjoy yourself, but also actually think a little bit and feel a lot. This had a lot of thought behind it. I was thoroughly impressed with this movie.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. When I think back to it, it's a simple movie in a lot of ways. It, of course, takes the time loop and runs with that, and that can get overly complicated, but it doesn't here. And it's just it's a very genuine movie. It's a lot of fun. Andy Samberg has never been better. Yes. The whole cast was great. I really, really liked it. And the news broke later this afternoon that it was Hulu's most watched original in the first 3 days, or most watched film ever, I guess, in the first 3 days that it was available. So that's pretty cool.
Really interesting moment there, because I did see that on your Instagram, and I was kind of surprised by it because Hulu does have some popular stuff, and they are cranking out a lot of original content lately. But this just shows you kind of the draw that Samberg has, and because people were just saying Samberg comedy, and everyone said, okay, that's fine. What's amazing about it also is that it really does fit the quarantine mold very well, because you are just simply seeing the same thing day after day after day. And so, I'm not going to say that Hulu planned this whole thing, but there will be YouTube videos later that discuss that. But I was sort of blown away with how just like smart it was, because it took a premise, like you said, a time loop premise that either could get complex or it could just get a little bit repetitive, or you see it the same, and it does it in a very, very different way. I was blown away by that one.
It's really wild, and like I said, it was surprising, I think, because we haven't had anything that original in quite some time that was also just a solid movie. And I think the bar's a little low for us, to be honest. This is not a knock against Palm Springs, because it's a really good movie, but I do think the bar's a little low for us, being at home trying to continue like enjoying film like we usually do. And not getting the greatest things out there. But this whole past week was actually a really good weekend for releases, and I'm behind on the new ones on all of them. But I did also watch The Old Guard, which was fun. I think you and I talked about this on the side, but there was something about The Old Guard the entire time that I could not figure out. I couldn't. Not the concept of it, but there was something about the movie that really bothered me. And I think ultimately what it did was it got really bogged down in the storytelling. And there's a good way to do that and a bad way to do that, especially when you're setting up this new concept and new, foundation for who these people are. And, they're immortals they're kind of like immortal superheroes in a way. And Charlize Theron is ass kicking as always, but they every time that they were trying to develop the plot, they focused on one-on-one conversations, which just slowed everything down. The action was great, but in between that, I kind of was like, all right, are we there yet?
Of the movies this weekend that came out, which involve characters that can't die, I think that Old Guard was a little bit lacking. It was the same thing that you said. I don't think that the actual legend was really explored that well. No. So you just sort of find out at the beginning they can't die until they can die, which means the stakes are both nothing and everything. And then I just found myself sort of forgetting a lot about it. I think the action was great, like you said. And I think Charlize Theron is a bona fide action star. I think she was great in this. I really loved her. But as a whole, the movie did just kind of, unfortunately, disappoint me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm interested. And I've said this since I watched it this past weekend. I'm very interested to see where it goes. And I hope that they continue on, because I do think there's a lot of potential. Mm-hmm. And, not to give anything away, but there is a setup for the sequel or potential sequel. And I'm here for it. I forgot about it, to be honest, until that hit. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. So I'm all for it. I mean,
it does have a great stinger at the end. I love that. Like that was where I was just like, okay, let's be a little bit happy there.
It's like that meme where the woman's like, ugh, but then that happens and she's like, eh? Yeah, maybe.
Great meme.
What else have you watched?
I also watched one that came out before the pandemic started. It had 1 week in theaters, and then theaters closed. Not because of this movie, but because of other various situations. But it was called First Cow, the new Kelly Reichardt movie. And this movie was exceptional, but damn, did it take his time. This is one where I wouldn't recommend it to, unless it's a cinephile friend, I wouldn't recommend it to a friend, because they'll just be like, what did you just make me watch? Right. It was amazing. I think it was like one of the best. It was just, it was about 2 hours, which runtime is runtime. But I was thoroughly impressed by how it talked about the American dream in a way that is a little bit more unique. I mean, Kelly Reichardt likes to, in a movie, you should show, not tell. But in a Kelly Reichardt movie, she shows everything and tells you nothing. And it, makes it a bit of a challenge to view it, but it just also makes it something that, you really do feel satisfied at the end.
Yeah, I still want to see it. I have not watched it because it has that feel of like I have to be in the zone and in the mood for that type of film. And I tend to watch a lot of stuff before I go to bed. And if it doesn't keep my attention, then I'm out. And it strikes me as one of those movies that I'll start at like 10 p.m. and fall asleep 30 minutes in and, struggle to finish. So
I love this movie, and I would fall asleep 30 minutes in.
So what about Relic? I know you and I both watched that. So this is a film that I struggle with, and Rotten Tomatoes had it at, I think, a 93% at the time that I watched it, and it was getting a lot of a lot of great press, and the social media response for it was really positive. And I understand that, and I can see where it comes from. But the reasoning is, and so the premise of this is an older woman goes missing. Her daughter and her granddaughter show up to the house, and they're trying to find her. She shows back up, but then there seems to be something else going on. So, the
solid
question.
Horror movie premise, first of all, just solid horror movie premise.
Right.
I was getting jazzed about just thinking about that. But
well, yeah, so solid, and then they add in potential dementia and other aspects. But it's definitely a movie with a message. It's a metaphorical movie, and I saw that and I identified with it, or at least I identified that it was there, but I didn't connect with it. And I feel like, that made it a mediocre movie for me. I wasn't too thrilled. I thought the payoff wasn't really there. And I've chatted with a few people offline about it, and they've kind of made the comment that, like, one individual had a family member or a family experience that kind of the movie resonated with them because of that, and totally get that. I love that. But yeah, I struggled. I was bored with that movie.
I don't think it did the work required to be a metaphorical horror movie. Mm-hmm. And we are talking, for some reason, I don't know what it is, but I was obsessed with runtimes. And, I saw most of the movies were a 90-minute runtime this weekend.
Yeah.
And, sometimes that was great. Sometimes that causes the movie to be poor. I think this movie needed to take a little bit more time on some things. I think, like, there was some issues with me just not feeling the suspense at any point. I mean, the other problem is that I mentioned this in my review, but I have a very lovely living room with natural light. And this is a very dark movie. So all you could see is my reflection for most of it. And, while a grandma's attacking her granddaughter, you just see me on the couch with my quarantine bod. And that's not really going to do anything for anybody. And so it was just those little aspects that just sort of, I said to myself, like, this was one where if I was in theaters, I may have given it like a straight up A and just been, terrified the whole time. And it's like, I get it. But really, like, the home viewing took me out on this one.
I think horror movies in general are that way, right? Like, you need to, I think, be in the mood, in the mode for them. You need to be in a proper place to watch them. This is a very dark movie, and I was watching it in a room that has a lot of natural light, and I struggled for a lot of it. I was like trying to block out the sun coming in to figure out what the hell was happening, and I still didn't figure it out. But I liked it for certain aspects. It has a lot of potential. I wanted more. And speaking of runtimes, that was one thing about the Old Guard I thought as well. Even with focusing on the story and all of that, they could have cut it a little bit. I felt like it could have been a tighter film if they would have streamlined the storytelling a little bit more and really just rode the action. I think it would have been better. But again, I'm excited for what the future holds. All right. Well, we watched a lot of movies, so we're living up to our oath.
I do technically have one more.
Go for it.
Greyhound.
I didn't watch this yet.
Oh, so yeah, this was the movie about Tom Hanks starting a bus company in Florida, and it was just like dynamite moves. So I almost made you spit out Rita's. Okay.
For people that will be listening to this, I'm literally like smashing Rita's into my face while I'm Rita's Water Ice while I'm doing this. So I'm very professional here. Welcome to the Guy at the Movies live show.
So with this whole situation, Tom Hanks is I almost said submarine captain, but he is the emphasis of that. He is a battleship captain trying to get through an area that has no air support during World War II. And so German submarines take hold. I think that this movie was very good for what it was supposed to be. Like, it did a lot of great, like, technical, real-time filming. They are going through there, drawing maps. They are, like, speaking all the codes to everybody. There's moments where I'm like, what is he doing? Wait, did they just drop a bomb? What? Oh, no, that was that to mess with that. And so, like, it was one of those things where they did not explain anything, but you started to understand what was going on there. Now, it was, if you're expecting any sort of, like human emotion story, no, this is a movie about a submarine getting from point A to point B, and it's suspenseful and impactful and a great watch. But if you're expecting any sort of Hanks romance, which you get like 2 seconds of in the beginning. It's not happening.
It sounds very simplistic, kind of like 1917, and like the core storyline of that is just following one thing happening.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much, that's a very apt comparison.
I'm into it. Yeah, I need to watch it. It's on my list. That's actually, it might be on my list tonight. Who knows? But yeah, Tom Hanks is one of the greats for me. So any movie that he's in, I'm like, yep, I'm there. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, he managed to carry this one. It really was. It was a good Hanks showcase, like truly.
I'm excited for it. It was a big get for Apple TV Plus, especially, I know Tom Hanks was a little miffed that it wasn't going to be seen in theaters, but hey, good get. I'm happy to see new content like that.
I should have brought that up. This is another one that, we were making fun of Hanks for being upset about people not going to the theater to see it. But honestly, I get it. This movie was like, with the sound and the angles of the cinematography, this movie was meant to be seen in the theater. And, it was still very enjoyable on the living room TV. It wasn't like Relic where I couldn't see anything, but it was pretty wonderful to still see.
That's awesome. And it ends with the submarine scene in Aquaman, right? So it's a prequel to Aquaman.
No, I was going to say that the submarine ends up having dementia. And so you have to be able to link those two together. And really the submarines are dementia. Yeah.
That's what's going to start happening if they can't film any more movies coming up. They're just going to do crossovers of all these movies.
A Relic and Greyhound crossover. That'll be fascinating.
Yeah, and then you find out in the third film that it was all a time loop. They're doing it every day.
Callbacks. There we go.
Hire us. All right, cool. So let's get to the movie news of the week. There was quite a bit of news early last week, and then it seemed to just fall apart. Hasn't been much in the past few days. But some interesting things that we'll discuss. First and foremost, AMC is going through some turmoil here, right? So as theaters continue to do everything that they possibly can to stay afloat during the ongoing pandemic, AMC Theaters announced that it has restructured its debt in a way that will keep the theater chain alive through next spring. You may remember that there were rumors that AMC wasn't going to make it through the summer, that that's part of the reason I think Tenet was being pushed so much, was to help some of these theater chains and small theaters out. But it looks as though they are going to live to showcase films another day. Are you an AMC goer, or what's your theater of choice?
I'm a Bowtie Cinema Marquee because they let me put my feet up, and then eventually sometimes there's movies at the Showcase, and I feel like just a pauper going in there and just sitting in a regular seat, But the AMC's are not really too close around me. It's mainly just Regal and Bowtie.
Yeah, I'm Regal all the way. I always get a Regal. But it's interesting with this. I don't know a world without AMC and Regal near me, which sounds kind of cheesy, but just growing up, those were the theater chains around me. And AMC, I always thought was the better one in a way. That was what Regal strived to be. But meanwhile, Regal, unless they're just not talking about it, they're kind of coasting through this. And AMC on day 2 of COVID was well, we're not going to make it.
Well, I think AMC is more of the barometer for this, because it's hey, if AMC is doing bad, then the rest of the little ones are definitely doing bad. And I think that's where, situations could be. It also could be the presence of, cinemas in Europe, where things are starting to open up a little bit better. And so, is AMC available in Europe? I don't know. I'm just theorizing here. But, but in other areas like Showcase, I know is a big one in the UK, and so they might be doing well. I haven't been to my Showcase in 5 or 6 months, but they may be able to take place in the UK and be okay.
Yeah. The challenge, I think, is they're going to run out of content. And, if these new films aren't going to theaters, because of course they want the widest reach they can get, I don't know if it makes sense. There's a local theater near where I live that just shut down. They had reopened and then they shut down the inside theaters again, just because they're not getting the new content, and the new content's what's going to drive people going, and they're not even getting that foot traffic. So they purchased a screen for outside, and they're doing a drive-in in their parking lot, which is cool. And that's a little gimmicky in a good way. It's interesting for people and a fun night out. But I don't know. I miss the theaters, but I'm also in no rush to get back into a closed space like that with, people who have been wherever. I don't know where they've been.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, I very much like anything inside for a long period of time. It's just something I don't want to be involved in. And
Yeah.
usually I went to see the movies that had two people in there anyway. Like I was going to see First Cow. That's not exactly a blockbuster, and so like, I'm not too worried in that situation. Or I'd go at very odd times. So in that regard, I'd feel okay about it. But I'm gonna look at the health professionals and wait for them. It's curious to me to think about like if every single theater everywhere, all the theater chains close down.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, there's going to be have to way to distribute those movies. Now, does this mean that studios start to realize, crap, we have to show our movies somehow? Maybe we figure out a way to buy these theaters out, and maybe there'll be a Universal theater, there'll be for some reason Miramax is in my head. Miramax, which has been gone for a while.
Sony and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Sony. But they'll be can that happen? Now, you have brought me on as a co-host, and I thank you, sir. But our first story is one that I know very little about in terms of business. So right now I'm grabbing at all these different.
No, I hear you. It is really fascinating. I mean, so I'm a nerd when it comes to the business behind things, and I have looked at this a lot. And part of that is part of the theater challenge is that they don't make a lot of money off of the movies, so to speak, right off the bat. A lot of their money is made at the concession stands, and what we've been seeing with theaters, even when they were reopening, is that they were limiting what was being sold there. And it's just, I don't see how it makes financial sense. I actually, for a long time, have thought, I don't know how it makes any financial sense for any theater to do anything on a good day. Because it just seems really challenging in terms of the finances for me. But you have some companies that were looking at possibly buying AMC out. Amazon was one for a little bit that was rumored to be in talks with them to purchase them, and that would be kind of fascinating. I mean, I know Netflix just bought an old theater, the El Capitan, I think, and they're going to be showing like art house stuff on weekends, but then using it during the week for their premieres and stuff like that. Obviously, that's one theater; it's not a chain like AMC, but I don't know. It's again, I don't know how they're making it through this. I'm very surprised, and this is probably just me not being knowledgeable on the subject enough, but I'm very surprised that you haven't seen AMC and Regal and Cinemark and the bigger chains move into more of a streaming situation. I know that there's a AMC something like there's a streaming option where you can access something through AMC, but with AMC stubs, with Regal Unlimited, I'm surprised that they don't want to utilize that as sort of the gatekeeper for accessing films online instead of going straight to VOD for $19.99. And that remains to be seen how profitable that is in the long term for them, but for theaters in particular, to get a piece of that pie, to get a piece of that money and be able to still distribute the film, so to speak, I just always thought that was something to look at, because we're going to see theaters rework their business model, because this is showing that they were teetering on the edge, or they are teetering on the edge. And who knows what it's going to look like going back. I mean, if we're in a situation where we can't be inside around a ton of people for a long period of time, it's going to hurt theaters long term. So what is the other option? And it's an industry that has been resistant to change for quite a while. But I think their numbers up, and now it's time to figure out what the future of movie theaters looks like.
I mean, part of the problem here is that this article we just read has nothing to do with them trying to change their business model. It's just like, hey, we figured out a way to get money for doing nothing.
To hang on. It's really fascinating. It's really fascinating, because then you have studios that are still pumping out. They're planning their movies. Like next year is going to be a big year. Should we be able to get back? And one of those studios is Universal. So here is my my slick intro to the next story. But there's Universal's been really focused on their the movie, or the monster universe, and they have now tapped Toy Story 4 director Josh Cooley to bring Little Monsters to life. Wasn't there a movie called Little Monsters? Like
was. It was a zombie preschool comedy with Lupita Nyong'o and Josh Gad, because
that's exactly right.
man.
Well, this Little Monsters is going to be a new live action hybrid. It's going to be a family friendly film that will feature the Universal monsters that we all know and love. Cooley is going to write and direct, and it's just kind of interesting. We know that back a couple of years ago, they tried kickstarting the Dark Universe and really bringing their monsters back to the forefront. I think the new Epic Universe theme park is going to have a big section of the park focused on monsters as well. So, Universal's going back to its, its foundation of having those great properties. But we also had The Invisible Man this past year. Paul Feig is working on a Dark Army movie. And then we also have The Wolfman that's coming out with Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling. I almost said Ryan Reynolds. I'm like, that's not him. With Ryan Gosling. So this is just another Monsters property. It sounds kind of different.
Yeah, this one looks very interesting to me. They're very tight-lipped about it, but I love what has been going on with the quote-unquote movie universes at this time, because I think they've all have the plan that they're like, listen, we're not going to be Marvel, and Marvel took its time. Marvel did it before anyone else did, really, when it came to universes, with the exception of a few different things here and there. But Marvel did it bigger than anything. So then when the Dark Universe came out, that was a fairly terrible disaster. And so they just said, all right, let's just break this completely down, and let's have these directors do their own thing with each of these movies. The Invisible Man doesn't feel like it's part of a universe at all. Yeah. It was its own story being told that was a lot different. I know Leah Whannell, the person that did Invisible Man, is also going to be doing the Wolfman movie, which, sounds good. I'd love for them to do other directors, but this guy's awesome, and he's going to bring in this wolf. That sounds perfect to me. With this, it's once again, this is like something else where it's just, let's just take all of these characters, let's not try to connect a universe, and let's just like have some fun with the properties. I think that honestly, the DCEU like started to do this, where like the Justice League is a fun little movie, but then they said, you know what, we didn't really do a good job with the universe, so now let's just have like a simple movie here, a simple movie here, and let's just like separate it out a little bit and just have a little bit more fun and make separate movies. And then if things can coexist later, they can.
Yeah,
it creates more enjoyable movies in that regard.
Yeah, when you're not trying to force it, I think that definitely makes for a better film. I don't know what this is going to look like, though. Like, I just think of like a Goosebumps live action type film. I think of, and only because I watched it tonight for some god awful reason, but Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unite or whatever, Monsters
Unleashed, yeah,
that one, yeah, which has one of my favorite lines of any movie in it, though. And I completely forgot about it until it happened. Shaggy's like, "This is tied for the worst day or the scariest day ever," and they're like, "With what day?" And he's like, "Every freaking day ever." I love that. I don't know.
Remember this line delivery? Yes,
I love that. I don't know why, but yeah, I'm into it. I'm excited to see what they do with it. I hope that it keeps with some of the established vibes that they've already worked on. So meaning that you have Invisible Man that did have another message behind it with domestic abuse. And, they've kind of established that and it worked well. Obviously, I don't think they're going to go too deep with any messaging here since it looks like it's going to be family friendly. Yeah. But I want them to have the opportunity to allow this film and the monsters and however they represent them to play in the world that the others live in at some point. So I hope they don't just set themselves too far apart that's not possible.
Yeah. I could see this as just being like an ode to the old Universal monsters. And that's what I love, is just having an ode to the old Hollywood kind of thing with its modern take.
Yeah.
I think that would be, something a little bit fascinating.
The comments that we're getting here is make it a remake of Monster Squad, written by James Gunn. It always surprises me that James Gunn did the Scooby-Doo movies.
Oh, yeah.
Wrote them. And, there's actually news that broke about that this week, too, a little bit. It was revealed that Velma was going to be a lesbian.
Yes.
But the studio kind of pushed that out. Because I think in an upcoming animated movie or something, she's going to be a lesbian. And that's kind of like one of the worst kept secrets to me. I always expected that.
Yeah. Well, like, yeah, it's one of those things. Like, there's so many of those. I mean, where it's was it Peppermint Patty is technically a lesbian and stuff like that. You have all of those going on. Like, and you look at those, and they're from the stereotypes. They're from like the classic characters. Then they're theorized and fetishized, and it turns into something that could actually occur.
Yeah. Yeah, so hey, James Gunn has said that the third Scooby-Doo was going to be darker. I don't know how we got on Scooby-Doo. I don't know why I made that left turn today, but I don't know. It was one of those days where I was just needing something mindless. But yeah, so Little Monsters, we'll see what happens with that. But speaking of kind of how we take characters and we fetishize them or sexualize them, remember the bat nipples in Batman Forever?
You are the king of
segues into new stories and
that is just brilliant moves right there. Yes, I do remember the bat nipples. A sentence that I never thought I'd say.
You may be in luck, Sean, because you could get a 170-minute cut of Bat Nipples, because Variety is reporting that the late Joel Schumacher, director of Batman Forever and Batman and Robin that we don't talk about, created a much longer cut of Batman Forever that clocks in around 170 minutes. Cut is said to be darker in tone, featuring more scenes with Jim Carrey's Riddler. And that was one of Jim Carrey's best roles in my mind, because he was just batshit crazy.
Yeah.
And then it will dive more into this. It's said to dive more into the psychological issues that are plaguing Val Kilmer's Bruce Wayne. And I believe it was Nicole Kidman that played the love interest / psychiatrist or psychologist there. And apparently there's no discussions taking place, but what we've learned recently is that doesn't mean anything, because we get Zack Snyder's Justice League cut next year. And I'm a very big proponent of, like, if something exists like that, throw it on HBO Max. What are you going to do with it otherwise?
Well, I mean, that's what I'm wondering about this stuff. With director's cuts, I am it's very difficult for me. On one hand, I'm a purist, where I say, if it was released in a theater like that, that is how we should watch it. That's it. Right? On the other hand, though, a lot of times things are released in the theater and scenes are cut out because the studio doesn't want them in there and stuff like that. And so they want the true director's vision. And so that's good to have in a cut. On the other hand, sometimes the director really doesn't need to do all that stuff, like a Jabba the Hutt scene in the first Star Wars. We don't and so I go back and forth with this. I say to myself, like, it's fine, it's cool, it's like you said, just throw it on there, like, let's give it a try. Let's get those director's cuts there just to see them, just to see what there is. Other times I think about maybe the effects weren't done on certain parts of it, and so it just really wouldn't look right. And that could be the case with the Schumacher cut, because there was a lot of stuff going on in the background of those damn movies.
Oh my God, yeah.
I love the idea of getting more into the psyche of Batman and the mental health of Batman, because I heard this the other day, where I think it's very public knowledge, but where Michael Keaton, when he was wanted to be in the first Batman, he told Tim Burton, he's like, I can't do this role. He's like, why? It's like, because I want to play him like an insane person. He is someone who's crazy, and the only way to deal with the fact that his parents are dead, like, is to, like, literally dress up as a bat and fight crime. He's supposed to be a crazy person. And Burton's like, no, let's do that. Let's go down that direction. And so I think that's a great way of looking at Batman, which, the Nolan Batman movies are amazing, but they don't exactly go that far. He's a conflicted, tortured person, but, there's no eccentric nature to those movies like these have. So I really go back and forth on different directors' cuts. I'm interested about the Snyder cut as well. Like, I'm curious, like, will it make it better? Will it make, I don't know. I genuinely don't but I'm always, I'd be curious to see them. But in my opinion, the original film is the original film.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation, because the Snyder cut has so much behind it that affected why there's a whole nother story out there. But if you want to learn more about that, there is a Quick Bite pod dropping on Friday. I had the opportunity to interview Sean O'Connell from Cinema Blend, who is writing, actually just finished his book, which is Release the Snyder Cut, but it is a detailed look at the movement, the Release the Snyder Cut movement, and the ins and outs of it. So it really highlights the people that were involved and gets into a lot of the challenges behind the scenes with the film. So I had the opportunity to interview him yesterday. We had a great conversation. I'm very excited for that, but I'll drop that on Friday so everyone can learn about it and pre-order and get excited for that. But That is not the Joel Schumacher cut. What's interesting about Schumacher is number one, he's the director that he is. He was a great director, and they knew what they were getting when they brought him on. But what they wanted to do with these two movies, and they being the studio, they wanted to make it more marketable and be able to, again, toys. And I think McDonald's had a big push in it too. McDonald's was like, we want to be able to put toys in our Happy Meals and stuff. But you got a very fun movie in my opinion. I do like Batman Forever. I think Jim Carrey's incredible. I think Tommy Lee Jones is incredible. Apparently those two hated each other on set, which is a whole nother thing for me. And I would love to read more about that and learn more about that. But I feel a certain way about director's cuts. It annoys me that there are director's cuts. And the reason I say that is because, I'm a big proponent of you hire someone to do a job in terms of creating a film. And that's the film that you should put out. Anytime that a studio interferes or anytime that things are cut that, maybe for time or something like that, it messes with the overall intent of the story. So I'm interested to see it. Is it going to change the movie at all or like make it a much better movie? No, I think what it does is it just changes the focus of the movie and probably the tone a little bit. And then I guess Schumacher just didn't care when he got to Batman and Robin, and he was like, "Yeah, we'll just go insane with this one."
It's so funny that you mentioned that Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones didn't like each other, because I could have guessed that just by the names Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones. You think about a guy that's just like absolutely crazy all the time and the most gruff, calm person ever. I mean, of course those two are gonna. But I think it made for like some very interesting chemistry.
Yeah, definitely. And they're two fun characters. I'm excited to see if Riddler like makes his way into any of the movies coming out in the future. The 17,000 Batman properties that are in the works. But there was in Batman versus Superman, there's a question mark in the back of one of the scenes, so they were hinting that he's in that world. And then I guess in the original Christian Bale series in Christopher Nolan's Batman series, the third film, the studio was pushing for Riddler.
Mm-hmm. I remember the rumors were going around about Riddler or a Penguin, and the two big ones.
They wanted the rumor that I read was that they wanted Leo DiCaprio for it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was very fascinating. But hey, we ended up with Bane. Couldn't really hear him. It was more like all the time. It annoyed me so much in that movie. But the Schumacher cut, I mean, again, with HBO Max, go for it. Throw it on HBO Max. You have nothing to lose there. It's just sitting collecting dust. So we shall see. But I don't have a good transition for this one.
I was thinking about one too. I was like, speaking of bat nipples.
I was going to be like, speaking of not seeing, Bird Box is getting a sequel. So we learned this week that Josh Malerman, who is the author of the original novel Bird Box that the Netflix film was based on, he's releasing a sequel that is also being developed into a film already. The book comes out next week, I believe, actually. Mallory, a Bird Box novel, picks up 12 years after the events of the first film. Mallory is Sandra Bullock's character, so we're still seeing her. And I believe it says that there are lingering questions about the creatures, and they may be adapting or evolving in a different way, and new revelations about someone from her past that may not be dead.
You mean that one person she was hanging out with? How about
that one person? The book will be released on July 21st, and again, development's already begun on the film. So, did you like Bird Box? Did you see it?
I had a few issues with it. I think it was a marginally average movie. I can't imagine a The Happening and A Quiet Place crossover going well, but as far as that is, it went pretty okay. I think that my issues with it was that the universe was not explored properly, which is why a sequel, maybe, a sequel might be the way to go with it. I might get to explore a little bit more. The fact that you just told me it's about the same character means that probably won't happen. So fantastic. I personally just, I had some issues with it. I had some issues with the fact that Netflix definitely sent out a lot of dummy Instagrams to post memes because everybody watched this just because of the memes, and that really, really gets in my craw because I don't have proof that Netflix did that, but I'm certain they did some massive meme marketing because they tried to do it with Marriage Story, which didn't exactly work either. But I just think that with this, it could be interesting. Netflix will get their machine going and hype it up again. It might be okay. It was an okay movie. And so, is it something that I'm going to be excited about for a sequel? No, but is it something I'll dread? Not really. No.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I was fine with the movie in general. You want to see how petty I get with movies? Yeah. There is one thing in this movie that sticks with me to this day that annoyed the absolute hell out of me. I hate continuity errors because there are people that are paid to watch for them. And clearly they missed this one. But when she's in the boat with boy and girl and they're sitting I think they have blindfolds on or something, they cut over to the girl a couple of times. Maybe it's boy, I don't know, it's so long ago. But one of them, each time they go back to her or him, the blindfold's in a different position. It drives me absolutely insane. I don't know why. But I remember watching it being like, oh, okay, this is fine. And then that happened. I'm like, don't like it. This isn't good.
I love how that's what bothered you instead of them painting the car windows black and saying, how will we see? We'll use GPS.
I forgot about that.
When that line, I think that was great. I can't remember the actor, but he was in Moonlight. And he just really the line delivery of that. It's like he knew that was really stupid. Yeah. I'm like, well done, sir.
Yeah, and then I guess the ending, not to spoil it for anyone, but it's been out a few years, right? So that's okay. Is that the rule? Let's set that rule. The ending was different than the book, apparently. I guess the original ending in the book was more gruesome, where instead of finding this haven where they're able to live and see and whatever, they cut their eyes out.
Oh God.
Yeah. So Netflix opted to change that. But
that would have been a way worse Bird Box challenge because people are only walking around with blindfolds. But if they had that ending, the Bird Box challenge would have been a lot worse.
My God, that was Tide Pod time as well. So could you imagine? But that makes it that raises the question for me: what is the sequel going to look like? What are we going to get? Are we going to get? I'm assuming we're going to get a direct sequel to his book because it's his story and all that. But will Netflix be able to adapt that into a more family friendly? Because the other thing I read was I think this is going to be a little more crazy and darker. So, which I'm always for. I love dark stuff. Apparently,
Bird Box was probably watched by people that were far too young to watch it, but it wasn't meant for people that were far too young to watch it. It was a pretty, it was, if you saw The Thing, which that's all right, come on, then it makes you kill yourself, and I'm like, okay, well, that's because then The Thing is right next to them, and then they get pulled into the school for the blind.
I don't know. I do want to explore it more. I guess it's kind of the old guard for me. I would like to know more. So if they give more answers in the next one, I'll watch it. Let's be real. But I'm not counting down the days for it. So they are our quick hit stories. But here's our top story of the week, right? We got to focus on the fact that Disney is once again making a live action film. And the news that came out is that Jude Law is going to play Captain Hook. So Variety is reporting that Jude Law's in talks to play the infamous villain as Captain in Disney's upcoming live-action Peter Pan adaptation that is called Peter Pan and Wendy. So this is, by my count, the 97th Peter Pan movie. The film is expected to be a theatrical release, and it won't find its way exclusively to Disney+. A lot of people were thinking that it was going to go straight there, similar to how Lady and the Tramp did. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. Good casting. It was just yeah, cool. It's a sexy British guy. Hook was an older, ugly guy in the cartoon. Not that you could be attracted to a cartoon, or you could, but it's just one of those things where like make it a little bit more fun instead of like always choosing a really good looking British guy. Like, the past few have been, Dustin Hoffman is Dustin Hoffman, but then you'd have Jason Isaacs would be in there. And I just think that, first of all, the fact that I'm able to rattle off several different live action Captain Hook casting is probably one of the biggest problems here. Is that like you said, 97th Peter Pan. Now I was going to correct you. That's the 97th this decade. There have been 126 of them actually. But I think about this and I say it's been explored in every facet. It's like, what if Peter Pan grew up? The origin story of Peter Pan. What if Peter Pan wasn't there at all? What if Peter Pan what if the mermaids were like dragons, which was actually kind of one of them. And I and we can get into the different Disney live actions in a moment, but for me, it's just I think that okay, yeah, sure, British guy. A lot of these live action Disney things become this fan casting where it's like, wouldn't it be cool if this person played this and this person played this, and then it's like, oh, and then it actually happens, and you're kind of bored with it.
Yeah, Peter Pan to begin with is not one of my favorites. I mean, it's a story that I think we all know because it's a rite of passage to watch that Disney animated movie. But I don't know. That's one of the ones that I'm like, I don't really need to see a live action version of this. Are you a live action fan? Do you like what Disney's doing with pretty much just dipping back into their well of properties and being like, okay, now it's going to be live action?
So, I don't like it. And I really don't like it at all. Unless you bring something new and original to the story. I'll give a few examples, even though some of them are bad examples. But, probably one of my favorite live action ones was, The Jungle Book. Same story, did the live action, did something new with it. Made it a little bit different, made it a little more original. And it was something where I was like, oh, okay, I kind of like this. Then you have Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and Lion King, which really just did exactly what the animated version was. Now, do I like the animated version? I love the animated versions of those. Do I get a little bit of nostalgia when I see them? Yes. You know what else can give me nostalgia? Going to watch those again. I don't need to see and it just gets into one of these things where I'm watching the same exact thing over and over again. And I don't need to see a realistic version of Lemur, the candle in Beauty and the Beast, because he's a candle that talks. He's not real. I don't need to see the realistic version of that. All right. And then Lion King is 20 or 30 minutes longer because they have a dung beetle, pushing a piece of crap with Simba's mane in there, which I think by then has lost its scent because it's passing through an animal. But, other than that, the story is an exact carbon copy. And, Lion King's just an animated movie anyway. And so I think about this stuff and I'm like, this is my rule when it comes to movies that are coming out. I'm like, hey, it's a very simplistic statement, but it's one that I really try to live by. Hey, if it's good, it's good. And that's true. So I think about that with Lion King. I'm like, hey, if it's going to be good, then it's good. Or, if, and then it wasn't. It's and then things like that. Now, tell a different story with the live action remake. I think about Maleficent, which is a bad example. But, they were at least saying okay, instead of doing Sleeping Beauty again, let's actually try a different perspective with this. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So did as well with Mare, a few different ones. Snow White and the Huntsman. But yeah.
Yeah, which wasn't Disney, but I agree with the stories, definitely. They have a lot of success focusing on villains, so I'm kind of into. I mean, you're seeing that with DC too, right? I think we find villains to be more interesting and more complex, and it's parts of the story that we haven't jumped into before. But so I'm with you. I love The Jungle Book. That was actually a very surprising film to me because it's just really well done. And that was Favreau too, right?
That's what was so disappointing about Lion King for me. It's Favreau's involved, so he's going to kind of do it differently.
Yeah, Lion King just didn't have much heart to it, and it also has, again, a terrible line in it. The Beyonce, when near the end, she's like, "Lions attack!" I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is really Great.
So here's my take on Beyonce. She is an exceptional performer. She is the queen. She is amazing. She, is just like absolutely an amazing music producer. But she was caps lock acting in that, where it was just you can't do this, Scar. And I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, she was terrible in that. I was not a fan. But Aladdin is one of those that I really liked, and I think part of that is I love the music, but.
Mm-hmm.
They did something different with it a little bit. They really enhanced Jasmine's role and made it more about her stepping into her father's role as sultan, and there not being a female sultan before. And I really enjoyed that. Jafar was a little underwhelming for me, but
that was the rough part for that one.
Yeah, but I love Maida Musad and I'm forgetting her name. Oh my gosh, the one that played Jasmine.
Mm-hmm.
She was in Power Rangers as well.
And Charlie's Angels reboot.
That's exactly right. But yes, they were great together. They had great chemistry. And from what I remember reports a couple months ago, they were working on a sequel. And there are 2 straight to DVD or straight to cassette sequels that they said they're not going to pull straight from, but they're going to incorporate them into an original story. And I'm for that. I think that would be fun to see. But there's definitely aspects of Aladdin that then should roll into whatever they do next because of Jafar being a genie now and all that stuff. So,
yeah,
I mean, and another aspect of that was you have an iconic role that Robin Williams was is remembered for to this day, and Will Smith, I think, stepped in, made it his own, but did pay homage to Robin Williams. So.
I was impressed with the Will Smith performance because it was great to just see Will Smith having fun again because we haven't seen that in a while. Like we've seen him take baths with jellyfish, and I was just ready for him to finally, just have some fun for a little bit.
Yeah, and I liked Beauty and the Beast too, but I'm with you. I think this is all a money grab. We know this. They know they can make money off of these timeless tales, and so they're just making them live action. Lady and the Tramp.
It's because they want to. Explore the characters in a new light and show the characters to the families and stuff like that. It has nothing to do with money. Well, this is Disney we're talking about, Joe. Come on now.
That's why we're getting a Gaston and LeFou prequel series on Disney Plus. So
yes, please. I'll take that. I mean, come on, that's going to be great.
But yeah, do you? They're going to keep doing it, so it's not even worth me asking. Do you think this is going to keep going?
I was thinking about it, and I just said, I could really be a jerk and say, how come you haven't done the Pocahontas live action, which would definitely be the most problematic thing they could do. So they'll never go there, but except they're going to certain segments of Peter Pan. When I look at it, I think about Hunchback of Notre Dame would be a very interesting one. Because that's not really a Disney IP, and so what could you do with that would be a little bit different?
Yeah,
I think, Frollo is an extremely dark villain that we don't give enough. That is messed up kind of stuff that he's that. So there could be stuff there, which I like. Those are the 2 where I'm thinking, oh yeah, they're never going to touch those, without a doubt. The one I want to see, and I've heard it happening, because if they made this dark, it would be great. Is Pinocchio. They did a live action remake with Jonathan Taylor Thomas that we're not going to talk about at all. But Pinocchio, and I heard Guillermo del Toro might be attached. These were all rumors at this point, but
that's what I had heard as well. I was trying to remember who I heard attached to it.
That could be fun because they could make that a little bit dark, and really because there's a ride where the kids turn into donkeys, and Guillermo del Toro will make kids cry, and I'm kind of looking forward to that.
It's a terrifying film. There are certain scenes in Disney movies that are absolutely terrifying when you go back to look at, and that's one of them. They turn children into donkeys. So that I think that would be good, and I think that is in the works. We know the Little Mermaid's in the works. Mm-hmm. They made some rumblings. There were some rumblings, and they made some headlines with casting choices there because they cast a biracial woman, and people lost their minds about that. But I'm excited for that. They know what they're doing. That's the thing with Disney. They take chances in terms of this sounds kind of funny because we're talking about how they just make carbon copy movies, but I'm they take chances. But like the Lion King, that was new technology to make it such an immersive CG experience, and that it was a beautiful looking film. But there's a lot that I think they could do now. Like, will they ever get to like Bambi, which is something that one of my followers commented. Like, could you imagine a Bambi movie?
I thought about that
one. Some of the others, when I asked on Instagram, Nightmare Before Christmas was an interesting one. I don't know how you would do that.
Yeah, is that Disney?
That's Disney.
Wow. So with that one, I think like with a stop motion animated, I think it's all of them are creatures anyway, so they would just be live action skeletons. So I thought it would be a little bit like Lion King, where it's just another animated movie. Like,
true.
Yeah.
The other ones that came out were Princess and the Frog was interest, and I think that could be a good one. And the time is ripe for that because Princess and the Frog has been in the news, in response to all the racial turmoil that was happening, or it continues to happen in the country. Disney announced that they're going to repurpose and retheme Splash Mountain, which is a very problematic ride, very problematic movie that it's based on. And they're going to retheme that to Princess and the Frog, which is great because it's the first African-American princess, first Black princess, I should say.
Yeah.
And I'm all for that. I think that would be a great film. It's very underrated. The music in that is great. And the villain in that is somewhat terrifying.
That came at a time where it was just like people were done with the Disney animated. I remember when that came out and everyone was just like, no, Disney animated sucks. But that was a good one that just kind of like went under the radar. I mean, now like Disney animated's come back. But at that point, it was just one of those things where they were doing things like Home on the Range at that point. It was just like they were in a drought at that. They were just dying. And so, Princess and the Frog kind of got them out of a little bit of a, pickle.
It's true. And I mean, it remains marketable. There's toys for Princess and the Frog. That stuff's still out there. So it's not one of the forgotten ones like Home on the Range, like you mentioned. Brother Bear, which is one of my personal favorites.
Brother Bear. I forgot about Brother Bear.
Doesn't get much attention, but I love Brother Bear. That would kind of be cool live action, I think.
That would be interesting.
I didn't even think about that. The other ones that popped up, The Emperor's New Groove, which I don't think is Disney.
That is Disney, no.
Is it?
It's very unlike Disney, but it is Disney, yeah.
Okay.
It's an odd one.
Treasure Planet and Atlantis. I know Treasure Planet has kind of like a cult following, so that would be interesting.
Those would both be rather interesting, yeah. I mean, I think Atlantis was one that, like, they looked like regular humans anyway. Like, it was already an intense, violent movie. I mean, it would just look the same to me.
The problem with Atlantis, or doing that right now, is there's so many different takes on Atlantis coming out. There's a new version of the story of Atlantis that is written by someone that is slipping my mind right now, but it's in production, I think, at Universal. And then, of course, you have Aquaman, and then, of course, we may be going to Atlantis in Black Panther 2 or one of the Marvel movies whenever they introduce Namor. So there's just so much being done with that. I worry that we're going to get oversaturated with Atlantis.
Yeah, I thought you were saying I thought you were going to go a lot darker and say we're going to Atlantis, as in ocean levels rising and stuff. And I was like, oh god.
That's a metaphor that I could run with for the state of the United States right now. But the one that I really want to see, and I know this is in development, it's funny, we're a big Disney family, and my mother and I sometimes, like, when we're like stressed out with life, we'll be like, do you want to go to Disney? And so we'll like book a trip for a few months and just go down for like 4 days. So we went down in end of January or maybe it was February, before everything happened. And we were in one of the parks, and I remember saying, what movie I want to see? It would be really cool if they would do like a Lilo and Stitch live action. Like, that would be really cool to me. And literally the week after, they announced that they're developing that for Disney Plus. I was like, yes. So Stitch is one of my favorite characters because he's just ridiculous.
Yeah, so I would absolutely be on board with that.
Yeah. So we'll see. Any others that you would be on board with that you want to see, that you're dying to see, and you're gonna take Sam to see at midnight when it comes out?
I mean, she is the one that I would go see them with, because she's the one that advocates for them the most. I'd say, much like our sequel question, like last week, it's one of those things where, right now I don't want to see any of them. Mm-hmm. But if they present themselves, and they're interesting, I'll be interested in seeing it. So like the same thing with like a sequel. I feel like, when a movie's told, the story's done, go to the next movie and stuff like that. I think with like, the same thing with the Disney thing. It's like, I think they told the story. I don't know if there's really a different aspect they need to tell. Now, if it could be an interesting live action one, yeah, I'll be happy to see it. I'll be interested in seeing any of them. For me personally, it just doesn't feel like, it's worth doing any.
Yeah, and I feel like one we didn't mention that is coming out whenever theaters reopen and it's able to is Mulan. And Mulan's one that when I first saw the teaser for it, I was thinking, oh God, no, like this doesn't look good, whatever. But when I saw the actual trailer, the full trailer for it, it blew me away. And I know from reading that they've gone the great lengths to make sure that it's, culturally accurate and that it represents that culture in a proper light. And I'm very excited for it because I think it looks really good and it gets me kind of amped up.
I always forget about that one coming out because it does look like just a regular classic war movie instead of a Disney live action remake. And that alone just like says to me, okay, that's one that's one where they say something different. They're going to do something different. Hopefully. I mean, some people were upset like Mushu's not going to be in it. I'm like, good. Watch the animated one if you want to see Mushu. I'm done with that.
Yeah, and they took a lot of the music out of it, from what I understand. So it's not going to have like "I'll make a man out of you" and all that stuff. And but hey, it looks really good. I'm all about that, especially with a story that is based in such deep, rich culture.
Exactly.
I love that they're giving it time to breathe and they're actually going to explore that instead of Disney-fying everything. But I don't know. Disney, the one thing with Disney is I can sit here and criticize all their films, but I will be going to see them. They're always old faithfuls. Like I know that, maybe it's not going to be the best, but I'll enjoy it.
I mean, listen, I criticize Beauty and the Beast, but there was a moment where, like when Emma Watson came out of the little cot and she was like, "Little town," I got a little chills. And then the rest of the movie happened. But I
think that's a good movie.
I was like, okay, like I get what you're doing, Emma. Well done.
She was really good in that role. I was impressed.
She did fill that very nicely. She did do that properly.
Very, very impressed with that. Very impressed that we made it through our second episode together, but also our first episode with you as the official new co-host. How do you feel?
You know what? It feels absolutely great. One of my goals was to have a podcast about movies. Just because like that's the only way I just need to talk about them constantly. And it's even better that you do all the work and I just come on here and talk. So right off the bat, I just want to once again, I don't know how many times I'll be able to thank you for this, but thank you for choosing me as a co-host. I'm very excited for this and still having a great time.
Awesome. Well, hopefully that continues. But does that mean you peaked? Like this was the goal and now you have the podcast. So is that it for you? Like,
oh, I thought I was way better last time too. So like this is it. Like I'm on the downward trend. You're gonna get worse every time. It may plateau, but like that's how this is gonna go. Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, we're gonna need some more movie news to pop up because some of the stories that come out are just not anything I would want to dive into in a podcast. Yeah. But when I saw the stuff about the Disney live action with Jude Law, I was like, here we go again.
I think that came out just after we wrapped. Like, it was literally on Wednesday. I was like, oh, perfect.
Yeah, that's how it always happens, right? Yeah. And the way that like life is right now, Wednesday seems like it was 3 years ago. So I'm like, wait, did we talk about this? All right. Well, that's all the news for this week. That's the pod for this week. As always, keep your eye on GuyAtTheMovies.com for the latest movie news throughout the week. Sean, where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram at MathTeacherMovies. Come on and talk to me about movies.
Definitely do that. This week's new releases, absolutely nothing. There is nothing coming out this week. I think we kind of shot it all last week. So we had last week Palm Springs, Greyhound, Relic, and The Old Guard are the major ones. First Cow also is on video on demand. So definitely check those out. And upcoming events-wise, next Wednesday night, the 22nd, on the Guy at the Movies YouTube channel is Guy's Movie Quizzo Star Wars Edition. So join in for the fun at 7:30. I'm terrified to make these questions because we know how Star Wars fans are. So if I mess one up, it's going to be terrible. Oh, God. So nervous.
Just what you do is you ask, was Last Jedi the best Star Wars movie or a better Star Wars movie?
Maybe we'll have that debate coming up on the podcast. We'll save that for a week where there's not much news. We'll just dive into Star Wars and tear everything apart.
God help us if we do.
Oh God. So as always, you can catch Guy at the Movies live every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern with Sean and I, and catch it via the podcast on Wednesday mornings. Just search the Guy at the Movies podcast with Joe and Sean on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, whatever, all of those crazy ones. And you will find it. We will have a new cover art photo tomorrow, so please do not freak out when you don't see a Simpsons-esque picture. We are still the same people. And finally, please wear your damn masks because we need to. All right, see you next week.